Okay, welcome to another episode of the Impact Podcast. We are so excited that you joined us. We have a special guest today, and we'll get to her in one moment. But I am Aaliyah Johnson Roberts, and we have
Dr. Obiama Martin,
Damaris Alvarado Rodriguez,
and
we have Essence Presly as a special guest. I'm
Yes.
so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited that you are here, Essence. I cannot wait to share all or allow you to share all that you have because I consider you to be, like in my world, an expert in the early intervention space. Okay. And I thought it was amazing to have a connection because I know for me in my center, I'm always trying to figure out what's going on that side. Like, I feel like we're in our programs and we know our side, but there at times could feel like maybe a disconnect. And I would definitely not say that I am the most knowledgeable about early intervention. So what we did was we brought the expert here so that we could share her with you guys. So so I'll start it off by saying, I titled this podcast, These Children Don't Belong Here. Because I know I've heard it. I've heard it a number of times in those moments of frustration, or you may not get typical children in your program. And then it becomes this question of, well, this isn't the best space for them anyway. And that's a lot of controversy here. So before I get to that question, I do want to start out by, asking you to share who Dr. because I feel like you didn't put the doctor on there, who Dr. Essense Presly is and what you do.
And wait.
Every time I see her, and everywhere we go, they're like, "Oh, Essence," and I'm like, "Doctor." It irks my soul. Right. Oh gosh, thank you guys.
Well, I just want to say that you're like, when I came to know you, and I know you're going to tell everybody who you are, but to me, you're like a superhero, right? Because I don't know of any Black or brown person in our space that gets to do what you do. And I feel like our children are so unrepresented. So I've always just been like, whatever, you know what I mean? Because like, who else is there? There's only you. There's only you. So I just wanted to say
that burden must be so heavy left. So I agree. Ditto everything that Dr. Biam said. You are like my inspiration, my idol. Oh my gosh. Hands down. I really applaud you. Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, guys. Don't make me cry.
Well, you gotta tell the listening audience, like, how did you get here?
Yeah. So first tell us who you are. Tell them who you are. Doesn't get it out. So I just want to say thank you, just for having me today in this space. Thank you, Aaliyah, Dr. Martin, Alvarez, Damaris. You guys are so interesting how you're inspiration to others, but then for me, I always see other people doing great things, and you guys are inspirations to me. So I can humbly say that the work that I do is because of the work that you guys do out there each and every day. And I'm just in that space to bring it to light, because without you guys, there would be no me advocating for what I do. So I just want to preference that in all that I do it because I know there are people out there working hard. There are people out there caring for our early childhood children. And I know they don't get a voice. And it's interesting, Damaris, when you say, I'm humble about the doctor on my name, but that really all inspired from you guys out there doing the work, right? I was just in a space to really put it to get into that room and have a seat at the table. So please, please, please humbly continue to do what you do. Invite me back anytime to have a conversation about any of this, because we literally would not exist without the work that you guys do each and every day. So I just want to preference that with understanding I applaud you, and the work that I do is because of the work that you guys do every day. So Who is Dr. Essence Presly? So really humble beginnings, you guys. So I started out in K-12, special education, middle school. And I'm going to tell you, this is like God sent, because literally the population that I was getting for middle school, when I knew that they literally did not know fundamentals. And when I mean fundamentals, I'm talking about alphabet, I'm talking about phonics, sounds, I am talking about handwriting. Like what I was seeing in middle school special ed was shocking, especially for our African American boys, our Hispanic and minority boys. It was just like, how did you get here? Right. And not in a negative way to, to say they did something wrong. Right. But what happened along in the system for me to see 13, 14, and 15-year-old males not be able to give me phonemics, right? Sounds like I'm talking basic. And I'm like, wait, this starts in early childhood. Like this is not making any sense to me, right? So literally I end up getting a job in early intervention as what they call a SI, which is a special instructor. I did that for a while, had the privilege of working in early childhood programs. And some of what I saw was appalling, not in any of your programs, right? But those other programs that exist out there, it was just appalling. It was like, oh my God, like this is how kids get to 8th grade, 7th and 8th grade with no phonemics, right? No basic understanding of what I felt should be happening in our early childhood space. And honestly, not just what I felt, what development and research shows us that should be happening at those prime years of 0 to 5. So did that for a couple years, literally saved up some money. And we all get that myth, okay, they could do this, but I could do it better, right? So that's how a lot of people end up going into business, because they feel like they could do it better. But one of the things that I really wanted to focus on was individuals with developmental delays. Right at this point, talking, our program's been open for 12 years now, maybe 13, just trying to ramp up. Spectrum children or children on a spectrum wasn't really at the levels that we're seeing it now. I think even 13 years ago, we had a couple kids, right? But definitely not at the numbers that we're seeing now that brought me to this space and this conversation today. So it was really like we were a specialty. So going into business, it was like, okay, Essence, what's your niche? And for me, my niche was, well, what do you already do, right? What do you already hold degrees in? What do you do well? So it was really working with the special ed population. So I did that for a while, was able to connect with other family providers, really kind of showed me the ropes. And I knew the uniqueness that I brought was, I knew if my program didn't give them an early start, I knew what was to come when they got to K-12. So being in that space for a very long time, working through the ranks of being in the space of K-12 and having several positions within the school building, I knew what was to come. So it was not a mystery what was going to happen to those kids when they left me to transition into kindergarten. And I think on top of that, there was a lot of gaps that I saw in the system that wasn't connecting. And one of the questions that you asked me, there are still a lot of gaps in the system that is not connecting, right? You would think we would be further than what we are, but we are not. K-12 and EI and early childhood does not have conversations system-wide to the levels that they should with the people that have the expertise at the table, right? So conversations may be happening, but if they're not happening with the people that are doing the work, the people that see everything at the table, we're still a broken system. And I think I'm confident when I say I still feel like we're broken down. So, did that work for a little while. Somebody presented me with an opportunity to go back to school, which, I was like, but I did. And so really when I went to get my doctorate at St. Joe, the question really came up is, what are you passionate about? I'm like, I'm passionate about special ed and I'm passionate about early childhood, because I know what happens when people don't get a great start, right? They end up in the special ed system for lifetime. So I was able to really match my passion up with the academic work that I needed to do. So everything that I did in my dissertation studies, every class, everything really was about this work. And I just learned more about the system, more about what's happening behind the scenes. And really, that is who you see here, a person that put the time in to understand the lenses of K-12, the lenses of early childhood, and the lenses of early intervention. And so, and as you know, Dr. Martin said, it is very unique. I do wish it would be more people that comes over, but I do understand it has taken time for me to develop the skill and craft that I have. And I'm very proud of it. And I think to even get to present day is still advocating, right? Still advocating for a lot of system gaps, still advocating for parents. And I think this comes up in some of your questions later. You know, and it's interesting the topic that you gave it, because I think when you don't understand all sides of the system, it's very easy to blame, right? It's very easy to blame. And we want to blame because it's comforting. It's what we know, is what we know how to do. But I think our preference, even going into the conversations and the questions that come up today, is that there's really no one to blame. And the reason why I say that is because our system is feeling, all three of the systems are feeling pressure, right? That they have not felt before. So when you start to be in unmarked territory, kind of like what COVID was, right? When we had no game plan for that, you don't really know what to do. Right. So you're kind of, you know, flying a plane while building it. And that's really what is happening when we talk about that triangle, or what I reference, the triangle of early intervention, K-12, and early childhood, because we are a triangle that we have to at some point begin to understand that we all need each other. We cannot function. And unfortunately, we're just not there. But we're not there yet. But we're going to get there. We're going to get there. So, yep. So that's a little bit about me. Been doing this work for a minute. November marked our 5-year for an institute that I opened, really just to kind of get to this space. Thank you. And it's really just about the gaps that I continue to see. We'll talk about some of the other stuff that we're doing. Guys, that's really just coming from like, look, they're not doing what we need. So we need to do what we need to do, right? Right here. Like you said, at this podcast, doing the things that I truly feel like we have strong, educated Black women. I'm on a podcast with some strong women right here. So I'm at the point that I don't need a government system or a city or a political official to tell me what needs to be done, because we are all smart, educated women, men, expert in the field doing the work. And we just have to stop waiting for someone to fund it. You know what? I'm going to fund it myself, just like you did. I'm going to put this podcast together and we're going to make it happen. And then they'll come knocking on our door. So I just truly believe that. And that's
girl, you talking my language, girl. You talking my language. I had to come off
that like that's the space that I just kind of feel like we're in. We have to build our own table, build our own room, and invite them to understand the work that we're doing for our communities, because that is really who needs it and benefits from it.
Amen. Wow. Amen. That was powerful.
Thank you.
And I feel like we should just skip all these questions and just go into the deep, because that's what we do, guys, right?
You know, we don't have to have, we do not stay within the box, right?
Right.
We have prompts, and we use them or we don't. Okay. That's all I need.
Right. It's funny, Essence, how, you know, for the past 20 years, I've been working, you know, in childcare, and I've always noticed the disconnect with children with special needs. And that became one of my heartfelt missions, right? To create an inclusive environment for children, of all children, right? Mm-hmm. And I hate until this day, I receive phone calls from other providers and say to me, you know, I referred a child to you. He has an IEP because I know you know how to work with them. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you can't, you know, first of all, it's illegal. Second of all, stop doing that. Stop throwing kids away, because that's when you have these families that come into your programs and they're afraid. They're afraid to tell you my child has an IEP or something as little as a small speech. You know, we are able to identify, you know, when a child has something because of the years of experience that we have, you know, looking at children, the way they, you know, they maneuver around the classrooms, even the way they speak. So, you know, those are sometimes those conversations, you know, between me and the families are pretty difficult. right? They're afraid. I understand why they're afraid, because a lot of programs are, getting rid of them, or telling them that they can't, or referring them out. It really just irks my soul. And I really wish that if we had, just keeping it real, the proper supports, and we hold these systems accountable for what they're getting paid for, we would be able to really support these programs. These children, I'm sorry, and the programs, right? To be able to support the children. I just feel like there's a lot of BS, right? A lot of political stuff that people look the other way from, and it just angers me because we're not doing anything well, and it's only to our Black and brown children. And I see it in my program. I see it.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. So interesting. So one of the things that, and I'm glad we're having this conversation, and Damaris, you bring up several great points, is that so just to give you a little brief history, funding comes with objectives, right? They come with goals. So when we think about funding, everybody has to stay within their lane of funding. Now, that is a political advocacy space, but I also say it creates a space for opportunity, right? So what EIEI did was create that space for opportunity where funding did not or is not restricted. And I think because and even talking to, leaders and other people that work inside of the triangle system, again, which is early intervention, early childhood, and K-12, they have a desire, I can genuinely say, to do more. But when funding restricts what they're allowed to do, that's where frustration starts. And that's where we have to see, you're exactly correct, that level of advocacy step up, where we have and we make people fund in areas where gaps exist, and those gaps are there. So for me, I get it. I don't like it, right? But I get early intervention can only literally fund for direct service, which means speech therapists, OT therapists, physical therapists, nurses, they are only getting paid to work with the child. They are not getting paid to educate you as the provider, right? I get that. Did that space. I understand, right? Early childhood has a little bit more flexibility when we're talking outside of CCW dollars, right? There is some money there that they could utilize, which we continue to advocate for, that they can put some work together, because there's a lot of research grants that come out that you like, really? We got to pay them that much to do that? We already know the answers, right? But there are some dollars that they can put to really figuring out how can we work those systems together, right? K-12 is literally only funded to do K-12 stuff. So they're at the point, they're on the backside of the system where we can't do nothing until the parent is in our space, right? But then I think we also have to, and you kind of hit on it, deal with the dynamics of the family, right? So first thing I always say is nothing, never, ever, 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 never, ever, 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 never, ever, ever prepares a family for the understanding that their child may not ever talk to them, that their child may not ever do what they see the kids running down the street doing, that their child may not ever be able to go to a birthday party or socialize with anyone. Nobody ever prepares you for that. So let's just deal with the family, right? Every time I say it, I always get chills. Let's just deal with the family having to process that my child is going to be different for the rest of their life. You could drop the mic right there, because if you're a parent, you walk away understanding, whoa, how do I deal with that, right? So the thing that I try to tell early childhood providers, like you said, and they call you because they know you have that sensitivity muscle, that I call it, and that humble muscle to have a conversation with a parent that's difficult. And a lot of our early childhood providers and programs, they're not in a space to have a difficult conversation because they're not sensitive to know what you were getting ready to say to this parent is, one, confirming what they already think or have suspicion about. and that you are bringing it to their front door, that I am telling you that something's going on with your child. We're not even talking about getting to the acronyms that they got to learn, the 1,000 pieces of paperwork that they got to sign, the 15 people that got to come in their house, out their house. We're not even talking about that. We're just talking about the conversation of, you're telling me my child is not developing like the other 15 people in that classroom. That who's prepared for that, right? So one of the things that I always say is that early childhood programs, you got to have someone on your staff that, one, has that temperament, has that level of understanding, right? Has that caring and compassion to sit with a parent and let them process that. That might take a parent, first of all, some parents forever to process, right? But then be willing to say, I want you to start the process. So when providers say parents are in denial, they're not in denial. They're trying to process what the heck you telling them. Some of these parents are processing that my kid is never, ever going to talk to me. And I say that loosely, right? Because we don't know where research is going to take us. But right now, my kid can't even say, I love you. Right now, my kid can't even say mom. So so the balance that I have for the kids is because I get it. Right. And so once we get our early childhood programs, directors, teachers to take a step back and just walk in their shoes. We're not even talking about parents and families that are married. So now they're dealing with, what did I do wrong during pregnancy? What did he do wrong? Did I not do this? Should I ate that? Looking up every remedy online, right? Well, I shouldn't have did this, right? So we're not talking about that process that they go to. And humbly, we all say we've been there, right? What could we have done differently? We're not talking about siblings. We're not talking about if the parent has multiple children. How are those children adapting to that? Where is the frustration happening? We're not, and mind you, we haven't even gotten to self-care yet. We're not talking about how is that parent dealing with their job, right? And their space of, you always calling me because my child didn't do what you needed them to do. So you need me to come sit or pick them up. So you're not even talking about employment.
So wait. I got to interject here, because what I hear you saying from a holistic perspective, so many points. And so I'm only interjecting so that the listening audience get it, right? Because it's layers to this. And 10 years ago, to the point that you made earlier, they weren't diagnosing the way that they're diagnosing now, and we didn't have as much, right? Mm-hmm. And so the gaps that you experience, that we experience, are greater. Mm-hmm. They're magnified, mm-hmm. right, from before. And so as a parent who have children, mm-hmm. with IEPs and 504 plans, right? Mm-hmm. And have been a part of that community since they've been born. And mm-hmm. I have 5, mm-hmm. right? All of them.
Right.
So the providers, the advocacy piece, but also what I hear you saying that's really critical, because the frustration for me comes when people are like, I want to get in childcare because they think they're going to make this quick money. Mm-hmm. Or they are only interested in what I need to do to get pre-K counts, what I need mm-hmm. to do to get Head Start, not understanding the ramification and the full picture of what mm-hmm. comes with that. They're
the work behind that.
Yeah, they're looking investment. At the dollar, and they're not understanding mm-hmm. the families mm-hmm. and the children mm-hmm. that's attached to that. So when you say take a step back, and that's why I wanted to intervene, you're not just, we need you not to take a step back onto, not just considering what they all need, but is this your passion? Because if you're not passionate mm-hmm. about all children, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. you shouldn't even be in this work, because you don't get to, mm-hmm. and providers think, not all, that they get to choose.
Right.
You don't get to choose when, right. to your point, when there's funding mm-hmm. connected. Mm-hmm. Now, if you want to be private and you want to be on your island and you got all, then you get to choose.
Right.
Obiama, I want to interject, but also because I want to say this. I feel that teachers and the staff that I've been, with, we have a high percentage of children with special needs. About 48% of our program is special needs. We went to PBIS, we went through all of those trainings to be able to support that, because we knew that in our programs was like a safe haven. Right? A program that families felt safe in. When teachers came in, I think that once I shared, we have a high percentage, and this is how we're going to support you, and this is how we're going to, transition these students in, they get really scared. And here's the thing. I think that early childhood educators, when they go to school, there's no emphasis, number one, on special needs, just kind of like the really, if they're lucky, just the basics, right? So they get really, really scared, right? It's intimidating when they have 4 or 5. Last year we had 10 kids with IEPs in one classroom. We couldn't move them because every classroom had a 6 or 7, right? The return of COVID. Some of them were misdiagnosed, quite honestly. So, and then guess which ones they were? The Black and brown kids, right? I'm like, this kid does not need behavioral. This kid needs a hug.
Yeah.
Right? Right? You understand what I'm saying? And most of the times when the teachers come to me and say, oh, I really don't know, I'm like, give me an ABC report. If it's not in writing, I don't want to see it, because I need to see the trends, right? Or I respond back to them, did you give them a hug today? Because you don't know if this kid is hungry. You don't know what this kid went through at home, right? Maybe this child wasn't hugged today. Have you tried that? Kill them with nice, with kindness. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, right? But we try to find like those positive strategies, right, with these students. But what I've noticed with every teacher that comes in, they are definitely intimidated. They are scared even before putting in the work, right? And they have this because they're not experienced, but they also weren't taught.
Yeah. So I think you bring up a very interesting part, and I'm a plug the higher ed's responsibility into this in a second, because see, there's accountability on all levels. And so when you start to understand what is happening in the system and then what's not happening, and again, these conversations are not happening, right? Or they're happening with people that don't really know what's happening, right? So I think you're absolutely right. I mean, to just get to the teacher's perspective of training, right? So one of the things that I always share, special education is a learned practice. We are a learned practice, meaning there is no PD that's going to ever prepare you for what I learned every day when I deal with a child. And that's the misconception right there. So I'm going to just let that sit, because people think they got magic answers to deal with our kids that have different abilities. We are a learned practice. I mean, we go in practicing and learning, right? Now, I'm not taking away from the very fundamentals that Damaris mentioned, because there are some fundamentals. The fundamentals are, you need to understand the basic signs, symptoms of each disability, the 13 that are out there. We can't take away from that, right? That's fundamental. That's the theory. But the experience practice is, it shows up for every kid so differently.
Yes.
And so one of the things that my institute created was, I could give you the fundamentals, but then what I want you to do is give you the evidence-based practices that we know have worked. So then you now can start to shift and use and apply, and that didn't work. People think special ed, and it frustrates me, especially when people see people doing, I'm going to do a 2-hour PD training. You can't do a 2-hour PD training on what I have learned in 20 years and still continue to learn with each child that enrolls or comes in my presence that is showing up different, right? Let's just use the popular one, autism.
And it's the same thing over.
Right. And there's no depth to it, because they really don't have the knowledge. Because again, it's a learned practice. Us that's in the field that are doing this work, and it is a lot of early childhood SIs and out there, they really never get to time to come out to teach other people, because the caseloads that we carry are so high, or if they're doing it full time, it's just like, I'm just staying in. You never really kind of get out to show other people. I'm one of the very unique ones that have come out and try to teach and turn his back, but it's a learned practice of what we do. So just like teachers, you're figuring out, you're trying different things. We do the same thing. well, all 13 disabilities, right? We're trying, we're figuring out. And so I agree, all of our teachers need to have fundamentals, and we'll bring the higher eds in here, right here. Even with the higher eds, most of 3 courses that the state, and that's if you're getting certification, but they have one course. I teach with CCP. I think they get one special ed course. So I can't give you everything you're going to need to learn in 14 weeks because only thing I'm giving you is theory. So to Damara's point, you really are never getting any practice, right? Because each kid shows up different. So I think the point that I would want to walk away with for teachers and educators, this is a learned practice. This is literally, like you said, observing, pulling some things out, looking at some evidence that we know have worked. But literally, the basic thing for my job is patience. I have patience to understand when a kid's going to get it right, when they're going to get it wrong, when I need to, do some reinforcements, when they playing me, right? I got one now that he just totally playing. I'm like, we going to walk up these steps because I know you know how to do it, right? And smile, and you're right. And at the top of the steps, Damaris, I'm going to give him a hug, say I love you, and you're going to go walk back down the steps when we're finished going to. But those are the things, right? But that may not be what I need to do with another child. Right. So where it is really, people think there's like this one snap.
It's not a one size fit all approach when you are dealing with children that have different abilities.
It is. Yeah. And that is the thing that I think when we walk away with, I agree that every educator needs the fundamentals. But I can tell you, K-12 teachers, they have the same issue. If you go in any side of the K-12 schools, they're saying the same thing. We don't have any training. We don't know what to do with these kids. They need to be out our class. They said it when I was in K-12, right? So they saying the same thing. So it lends to
the system is broken. That's what it lends to. Right. So it's a broken system.
It is. So here's the question, and I think you guys are power women on here. When a system is broken, do we keep trying to fix it, or do we try to work on a new system? So with the Education Institute for Early Intervention, what we decided to do 5 years ago, okay, I can't keep working because, that's the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting the different results. So our philosophy is now, okay, so how can we build up a system that is How can we look at what is absent? So when we developed our early childhood special ed diploma, which we're hopefully in the final stages of it being our apprenticeship, we developed that because I know what it's like to be a teacher in a classroom, and I don't know the difference between autism or developmental delay. Wow. We can't even how are you having a PD with a person that don't understand the two differences? One has very distinct characteristics, right? And I know Damaris had to jump on her phone, but how do you know the difference between a person that has trauma, right? And a person that has a social emotional, could be developing some other emotional disturbance. Like those are different. So we got to start having that conversation with our early childhood population as a whole, assistant teachers, directors, owners, and everyone, because you need to understand trauma may show up as a behavioral, but when I have a conversation and understand a holistic picture, that trauma is not going to display the same emotional needs for a kid that's being impulsive, a kid that's being hyperactive, because the characteristics display differently. But if we're not having that conversation, we just keep trying to put everybody in a bucket because everybody's not special. So let's just talk about.
And Essence, here's the other thing, and I know you hear this and you see this, and I just want to draw attention to it. Children also mimic behavior as well. And so just because we see a child that is mimicking, you got to also be able to know when that child really is normal,
right?
Versus, them really haven't, because that's the other thing. It'd be like, oh no, and I'm like, no, I think they're mimicking, especially siblings. I get that a lot. When there are siblings and teachers, they make the assumption, oh, well, the sister's like that or the brother. Okay. But that's learned behavior because of the proximity.
Right, exactly. And I think and that is where we have to start to educate our educators of understanding a array of things. So rate is great. I know, we had a CDA that's great. We talk about the fundamentals, health and safety and stuff like that. But at some point, you got to infuse that there are different abilities coming into our programs.
Yeah.
And we got to be able to do the work to understand, like you said, how is that showing up? You got kids, and I've been in early intervention for a minute. They do some things at home, won't do them at the center, or they do some things at the center, won't do them at home. And until you have a conversation with both people, like, oh, I'm being paid. Right? This kid can do a whole bunch of stuff, right? But you got to be able to be confident in your skill level. And I really do believe our teachers possess that capability, but they got to be taught. They got to be coached to say, how are you having a conversation? Not talking about the kid, but understanding. So, mom, talk to me. Like, what's the routine when you leave here? Right? So you can understand, well, what is going on? Is the child getting some time, right? Maybe they do need a hug. Maybe they are like, look, I go to another job. So they go to, my mom's house. They got 8 other kids there and they just stay out the way. So it begins to explain. And I think, kind of get into it. And I think Dr. Martin summed it up, holistic view. Right. Yes. We can't just talk about. And so I used to do this, the math, the calculation of math when I was in K-12 of how much time teachers spent with kids. Right. And it was heavier. So when you do the calculation, and I'm not open 10 hours a day, but when you do the calculation of 10 to 12 hours at 5 days, that's almost 50, 60 hours, right? Let's take away the time that a child sleeps. So how much time is a child really getting, right, to be with their family and to do that nurture? So we have to take on what I call that second attachment theory of we're now that nurturer. So it's no longer okay. And I think it goes to the point, if you don't have that passion, get out the field. And I'll say that any day, because you are really taking, regardless by default, you are taking on that second attachment figure for that child. And some of us are not willing to do that. And so what we have is, frustration and this. I'm willing to do what you can do, plus what you want to do, and what I'm going to do for your child because I care about them. Yes. Right. And I know that as a parent, we talk about this, but guys, parents don't even know how to parent. So when I say the village is sick, the village is sick. Mm-hmm. So when we start talking about why the parents not doing this, my husband has a parent, I'm like, how the parent going to do it? Because the parent don't know what they're doing. Yeah. So if we're saying that we're truly right, and I know you guys do it too. When I talk about my early childhood educators, and you're coming in this space, there is a level of liability that a person is expecting you to be an expert. So that means you need to know that you know what you know. And if you don't know what you know that you know, then I need you to go be a bank teller. I need you to go work at Target. I don't have no problem with Target because I need you to take the people that I don't want in my field. I'm good. Pay them $15 an hour. See, that's the language that I feel like we got to start shifting because we letting too many people in our space that don't need to be here. It's okay that Target paying them $15 because the ones that's going to run, let them go because I didn't need them.
That part.
Anyway.
And
oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
The leadership part comes in. Like as you were talking, I just really thought about even the past couple of years, times when we had to shift how our program operated. And I knew, especially after COVID, I had to take accountability and prepare my program and my teachers and staff for what was about to come. We had no idea. We had children, whether they had IEPs or not, I figured we wouldn't be able to tell. So we had to, at times, say, listen, we're going to stagger and opening up classrooms. We may not open them all yet. We're going to make sure we not only have staff, even during the staffing crisis, we had to be selective of who we were hiring because, like you said, we don't just want anyone. But then we wanted to put additional supports because, I'm not going to neglect the teachers to say that, well, this is just what you have to do. We put in additional supports, including our own internal special needs coordinator who had experience and understood it a little more than teachers do. And then when we had our partner programs, I didn't just want the same PD. I don't want to do a child observation or I don't want to do, we literally asked for our first PD to be around learning the IEP process. A lot of times teachers don't understand. They need a one-on-one. That's what I hear. They need let's take a step back. Let's take a step back because I wanted them to be very clear about how the process works. And that documentation side is huge. That that moment when we have to say, okay, did you start your classroom off with the proper strategies of teaching them how to navigate the class? Did y'all had your classroom rules? We created the all of those basic things. I'm not saying it's easy, but there are some strategies and things that we need to make sure are in place. And I had to make sure even my leadership team was prepared to support teachers and holding them accountable. Then we had an accountability space for enrolling children, partnering with families, asking questions, right? There are a lot of layers. And you guys mentioned earlier in regards to these new funding sources, right? Pre-K counts, Head Start. I had to learn through experience that there's a difference between DHS requirements with health and safety. And now when we get these funding sources, and that's education, now we're talking about the IDEA. So now we're navigating all of these laws, and they're saying we have to do this, and they're saying we have to do that. We had to contact attorneys sometimes, like, hold on a second, because we had to start understanding the rights. And there's times I have to ask teachers and make sure that they are doing what they're supposed to do before we even contact anyone outside of the program. Because we have responsibilities as well. So this is where I think leadership comes in, and there's a level of accountability and excellence that we have to make sure that we're showing up every day in servicing children and families, because we're about to have play sessions so that we can show our families how to play with their children, because some of it is they learn it while they're in the program, then they go home, and if they're in this space where they don't know how to interact or create boundaries and rules and continue on what we've taught them, then we need to work with the families as well to make sure that there's a continued success level for the children.
So let me drop some nuggets for you. Go ahead, Mary.
I was just going to say, also understanding the cultures, right? Is really, really important to connect with these families, because there are, I have a lot of cultures, different families enrolled in our programs. And there are some cultures that are just not, they just refuse to acknowledge it, right? Because it's a cultural thing. It's an embarrassing thing. And once they start connecting with the programs, right, and trusting, right, the trust barrier is there, that they know that you're in a safe space. We're not here to criticize you. We're not here to change your culture and your beliefs. We're here to help your baby now before they get to kindergarten, right? To get them an early head start. That's what it is, right? I feel like that family partnership, a lot of programs don't have. So there's like a big I want to say big wheel here, of things and items that a lot of programs are not doing, maybe because they don't have the resources, right? We have second step. So when we use the second step to fidelity, it works. It works. I know this because I see it in action. When teachers do not use it, those are the ones that mostly complain. So I'll come into the classroom and we'll observe. And then I'll say, well, why don't you start using the tools that we gave you? Oh, but we're in a tree study. Not today. You're at the beginning of the year. Go. Right? So, sometimes I feel as though programs have to kind of like shift, right? And pivot. They just have to pivot to make sure that it works for a classroom. So we like to crosswalk our curriculum. Everything looks great. But if one classroom is struggling with 5 kids that are struggling in there, we have to start from the beginning. But guess what the school district said?
Well, you know what? And so let me, so Aaliyah, I'm not going to get to all your questions, but I'm going to try to drop some strong nuggets for all the providers that are listening here. And I'm going to give y'all some behind the scene things that you don't know. So Damaris, I truly agree with you. Second Steps has been around for years and years and years and years. We have a coaching program that does Second Steps, that we coach people how to use Second Steps. So it's a phenomenal program. We're getting ready to drop our Gifted and Lit program, which is another one that really looks at like culture. So I totally agree with you about these, about cultures, right? And I also want to make sure that to go along with that, let's address the elephant in the room. And then I'm gonna drop the nuggets that there is a perception about Black and brown individuals with IEPs anyway, right? So we dealing with that, and I think that's and y'all probably a little older than me, so that's been going on forever, right? So we have to build relationships with our families because we have to help them understand that it's not about a stigma, right? We're so busy trying to compete, and actually that's the training I'm doing on Thursday with another sorority. It's like we're so busy trying to compete, right? Mm-hmm. So when we put competition down, even in households, they're comparing and competing. When we can put that down and just look at the development of the child, it speaks volumes, right? So on top of cultures, we have to understand when we're working with marginalized communities, it is a stigma that comes with getting support anyway, right? That's grounded in history that we're now trying to even take that culture and break it apart and layer it down, right? To get the families to support what the journey that we're asking them to walk on, because it is truly a journey. So, all right, I'm gonna drop some nuggets because I don't know how long I have, but I only think we got to like 2 prompts, but I'm gonna get to 3 because I'm gonna drop some strong nuggets. So if you guys are listening to this podcast, write this stuff down because I'm definitely going to tell you some behind the scenes stuff that does not happen. So Aaliyah mentioned, understanding the IEP. So first and foremost, anybody that receives federal dollars, you're required to follow IDEA, right? Childcare works are federal dollars. So when you look at federal dollars that are available to the public, that means you are responsible for following those, right? IDEA is, people usually think about it in regards to public schools. Charter schools are public schools as well, but anything that's receiving a federal dollar. This looks very different than private pay tuition programs, just like it looks different when we talk about K-12 schools that are private pay, not copay. Private pay, meaning that person is paying $10,000, $15,000 out of their own money for that child to attend that school. That means that school is not receiving any federal dollars, meaning the regulations look a little bit different. But because most program in marginalized communities are receiving some form of CCW dollars, you are bound to follow IDEA. Okay, so keeping that in mind, I get providers that call, question, and I'm like, no, you can't do that, because when you signed up to take CCIS and CCW funds, you signed up for all the regulations that goes with it. Okay, so that's the first and foremost thing, that you are to those laws. Second thing, just to kind of share, is that IEPs go from 3 to 21. So the age of 3 to 21 means that whatever a K-12 school is doing, you're doing too, because the IEP, which is individualized education plan or program, depending on who you talk to, right, is from age 3 to 21. That document is worth everybody looking at. I wish I could drop it in the chat. I'll try to drop it in the chat. I'm sorry, this is my first podcast. So I don't know like how you guys do it, but there's a site called Patan. Oh, my cursor's not even on the screen. Patan, if you go to Patan, it's a free site. It is free for the state of Pennsylvania. I actually tell people, I think it's patan.org. I'm not sure, but I'll put it in the chat.
I'll share it.
Yes, you can share it. Patan is an awesome and wonderful website, not only for educators, but for parents and families. But the great thing about that website is they actually have IEP documents. Okay. They have IEP documents that are what they call annotated. All right. Annotated means it gives you the language from the feds that should be in the IEP. So those are documents that you can compare and make sure that you're following. Because one of the things, so the great thing about being an independent institution is, like I told you, we don't receive funding from all those places that say what we can say and what we can't say. So the great thing about is dealing with us is we get to say what needs to be said, right? But in those annotated IEPs, and I strongly suggest that if you are a childcare owner or director, you go onto Patan's website. It is free. It is called annotated. You print out a copy of the annotated IEP, because it literally tells you the language that should be under every category, right? It says what should be happening, what it should look like, what goals should look like. So you're not in the blind of what you should be following, because the federal government and even our state says, we're going to tell you. It's like not a secret, right? So I strongly suggest that people read the annotated. Now, for my babies that are birthed to 2.11, which is right before birth to 3, but right before they transition, it's called the Individual Family Service Plan. If you go to Patan's website, they also have the annotated version for that. Family service plans are oriented for family. They are very, very family centered. So the language looks a little bit different. The reason why you will want to have a copy of that is because, and we're going to talk about this, but when IEPs come into your program, you need to be able to read them and understand what you should be doing and not doing. So when there's a conversation of if a program can handle this IEP, you have the leverage to say, I'm not sure we can do that. Because when you start talking about, and I saved this for last, when you start talking about classes being pretty much majority of special ed, that's against the federal law because the child is supposed to be 80% on supplemental care with regular children. So I get concerned when my classroom, and I get it. So right, again, like I'm not saying anything like about anybody, but I'm just giving you, because when you can say, wait a minute, I have a classroom of 15, 10 of them. So this would be along the lines of a restricted classroom, which is looked down upon in our state.
Oh, come on and keep dropping these nuggets. Keep dropping these nuggets.
So when
That's all I'm saying.
But how funny it is that then they pull out that suspension expulsion policy out on you.
So we're going to talk about
right?
that.
I was hoping we get.
And then you got to pull back that pretend paper and be like, this is, yes, keep talking.
Yeah. That's why you got to read so you know what your rights are as a provider.
Exactly. So when we talk about, and again, I know I'm not going to get to all this, so Lee, you're going to have to do like a part 3, part 4, part 5. Because this is a lot of law, right?
It's a series.
In this, but what you need to understand is the reason why you need to read the IEP is because on the back where it says most of the child's day is 80% with typically developing children. When a program says to you, I'm enrolling, by law, you cannot enroll kids that are in 10, 12, 14 kids and they all got IEPs, because that's what we call a restricted classroom, which means that IEP should be saying less than 20% of the child is going to be in with typically developing children. So what we have is, because, and again, I'm not expecting our program. So providers, if you're on here, I know you don't know this, right? So that's why I'm giving it to you. But you got to use the leverage of the law to help work in your favor, right? I don't have to. So Damaris, when we talk about suspension and expulsion, I don't got to worry about suspension and expulsion because the IEP trumps that. If the IEP says that the child is supposed to be 80% with typically developing children, and my classroom has 12 kids in there, which means their percentage is way off, then the IEP trumps whatever other policy, because it's an individualized education program, point blank. There is nothing that supersedes the child's IEP. And that is the nugget that we got to understand. So you got to understand the language in that IEP, because those percentages are there to protect you. And like I told you, the IEP is from 3 to 21. So the same thing that's happening in my program is happening in K-12. When I talk about a kid having access to typically developing children, and I'm saying they're receiving supplemental services, which means more than 80% of their day is with typically developing children, and they're in a classroom and everybody else got IEPs, I could come back at you, because that's not my kid being in a typically developing classroom with non-disabled peers. Nothing supersedes that, because that's an individualized education program for that child. Nothing supersedes that. So you guys when you guys are figuring out, and this, again, I can't give it all to you here, but when you guys are looking at the construction of those classrooms, you got to say, wait a minute, because I got an IEP that says this kid is supposed to spend 80% of their day with non-disabled peers. So I got to look. So if I can't take it, it's not about suspension and expulsion. I got 4 federal IEPs here that said these kids are supposed to be with non-disabled peers. And that's where you highlight it and show it to whoever giving you some static, because that means they don't understand the law.
Highlight. You got to highlight it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where you have to know. So understanding that annotated IEP is critical. So my school age programs, because I get calls about, I think I got 2 more I got to call back. School age programs, IEPs extend to non-academic activities. It's in the language. I'm not making it up. When you read the IEP, I promise you, everything I tell you, you'll find there. So that means when children, and this also goes to our programs that try to say kids can't go on trips and all this other foolishness, and I call it foolishness because I know the law. You can't say that because that IEP extends support for non-academic activities. So that means anything that child needs to support their education is a non-academic activity that you as the provider have the right to say this child needs support. Because if you don't give me a support, then you're in violation of the IEP. So they got to have it one or two ways. You can't have it both. You either give me the support that comes with the non-academic. For my school age programs, that's the part that extends to you. But most school age programs don't even know if kids are on IEPs, but then that's again a fault in the enrollment process. But for my school age programs, you should know who has IEPs, because if that child needs support, the IEP extends to you, right? Now we'll talk about
specific supports though.
Say it again.
That's if they receive those specific supports.
Whatever supports they receive in school, it should be checked for the child care program. Now, again, that comes through some conversations because that means you have some release of information on file. Everybody in your program should have a release of information because anytime you need to talk to somebody, you need to be able to pick up the phone and talk to them, right? So our school age programs, they kind of go with that too, before and after programs, because they got kids and they don't even know that these kids got an IEP or, you know, what the supports are, but they extend to non-academic. So you have to keep that in mind. Like, wait a minute, this child, or even to know what the goal is, right? We get our school age kids and we don't even know, oh, wait, they got this. Oh, that's a trigger. Oh, they not supposed. So the more information you understand, because the IEP is a federal document, age 3 to 21. So what is happening in there, you have to know that it extends to your program. So that was the first thing I want to say. Annotate it. Make sure. What's our time? Are we done in an hour? We are. Okay.
That's all right. This is probably going to be a series because it's so much information, and I don't want our audience to be overwhelmed because we understand each other.
Right.
But you know, those that are listening may not. So this is definitely a series that we can, you know, come back to say, okay, in this section we're going to focus on the family component. In this section, we're going to focus on laws. In this section,
because that's how I have it. Yes, even in my stuff that I do on videos and we post and stuff, I do because it's so heavy. So I think you're right. So the tips I could get you to walk away with today is go to Patan. Look at it. Patan offers free training. So wouldn't it be great to get free training from people that's actually in special ed and not a whole bunch of people thinking that they know that they don't really know? Yeah. So excellent opportunity to sign your teachers up. Patan does our state approved. They do Act 48 for certified teachers as well. So they have a lot of training on there and they have training around different disabilities. They also have different literature. So one of the documents that they used to have, I haven't checked recently, they used to have an acronym sheet. Oh my God. So providers, directors, owners, you need to get the acronym sheet because I know I done spit out some acronyms. You should have that because you need to know when people show up in your program spitting out acronyms, you need to say, hold up. Let me see what you're talking about, right? You don't just go along with it. People just be going along with stuff like, wait, you don't even know what you're agreeing to. So I think the walkaway point to Dr. Martin's point is go to Patan, check it out, look at the forms, even evaluations that are done by psychologists. They have annotated versions of evaluations. You have the right to request an evaluation. There's so many rights that PCE programs have that they haven't tapped into that can really help and support their program. I don't even need to talk about suspension and expulsion if I just get people to do what's right within IDEA.
So Dr. Essence, can we wrap up with number one, go to Patan, but also for the providers that are listening that have never heard of you, don't know anything about you, how can they find you? Can you can you say what your contact information is, and then also put it in the chat so we can share that out as well, because you are an amazing resource, and you guys can hear that she is like just a well, right? Just a well, and she's passionate about it. And so we definitely want you to be able to get in contact with her, because I know, I can only imagine those of you that are listening, like, where's she at? Where's she located? I need her. And so we want to make sure that we can get in contact with you.
So no problem. And guess what, Dr. Martin? I don't even charge people. You just call me, right? You don't need, Aaliyah, don't be calling that lawyer before you call me, because I probably can go through half of what you need before you spend some money. Because guys, I am a childhood provider. Like, I care and I want us to grow. I want our communities to be strong for my grandkids, for generations to come. So it is about, we have coaching programs, we have other things we do. But to talk with directors to make sure they're not caught up, because I know how hard it is to build a business. And so do all these ladies on here. And have a blink of an eye, I do not want to lose my business because of ignorance, right? So I believe that as a business owner. So I always tell people, so my contact information, I put our website on there. It's eiiservices.com. You can check out which stands for the Education Institute for Early Intervention. We do a lot of services. We have 5 pillars under there, but check out our website, my contact information, my cell phone. So our business cell phone number is 267-415-6724. So again, that's 267-415-6724. And people can always email me. Now, I work just as hard as all these ladies on the phone. So I always say, give me 48 hours to get back to you. But my email is epresley@eiforei.org. So you're welcome to email me. I also want to put our helpline in. So thank you. Real quick, real plug. Our helpline just launched. So it's so funny. Aaliyah text me. So I'm going to tell you guys, this literally came from the ECE space. This helpline is for you guys. We have a database of over 1,000 resources. This helpline is for you. And really, the reason it was developed is because we knew the frustration. Programs did not know who to call, how to call, who's going to say what. The state thinking that is no problems. I'm on the phone are you crazy? It's a whole bunch of problems. Providers not really wanting to say what's going on, all of the space that we go through. So we created the independent helpline where you can call. We do respond in 48 hours because they either work or volunteer. And we really go through a series of questions. We get a description, understanding what's happening, and then we provide you with the resource. But the amazing thing, guys, about the helpline, it is a data tracking system. So we pay for what suicide prevention hotlines pay for to pull the data to present to the state of what the crisis is. Because they don't know. They talking something else. And I'm like, y'all ain't talking what I'm talking, right? I'm answering calls on the way to work, on the way home from work, all of that. So this actually hotline is for you. So that at the end, we can collect the data. We pull out some awesome graphics and reports to say how many calls we're receiving, what we refer them. And the amazing thing, we have a parent portal of this as well. So for the parents that don't want to have that conversation, you could give them. We have people that are trained to talk to them. Most of them will get me right now since we just launched, and we've been having parents call. So again, we're now able to track what a provider saying, but also what are our parents. And so,
Essence.
And I truly believe.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt, but do you have a parent advocate also?
So we don't have no parent advocates. We have a proposal in for that, but we don't have any parent advocates because there's a couple grants out there that's supposed to be doing that. Damaris, they got all me. I can advocate them right on up to the state, even if they need due process. But the goal is to really train some other individuals. And that's one of the proposals that we have out there. Because again, I can't clone me. But we're looking to do this so we can get the data to support to get funding, right? Because everybody wants to see is there a need. But yes, Tamara, that is in our space. But we really want to train our parent coaches, is what we call them, to really be not just in autism, because I think that's just the new thing, not the new thing, but we just have a lot of people growing in that space.
Right.
But there's a lot of other disabilities out there that parents are really struggling with. So we want to make sure we have a balance of parent coaches and making sure that they're really to lock arms with families and to really help them in their early childhood space. That's our goal. So for providers and for parents, the helpline is there. Again, a tremendous amount of resources there. And this is for us. Like, this is for us. No kickbacks. This is just me saying I'm going to invest in this. And this is what I feel like, our leaders need, and we're going to do it. And we're not going to get permission. We're done asking permission to do what we need to do for our communities. I'm over that. That's it, Pat Shield.
I love it. Oh my
gosh. This has been another Impact podcast. You have been listening to the voice of Dr. Essence Presly, none other, our superhero in this space.
Yes. Thank you.
Listen, for those of you who have been watching, Dr. Essence, thank you. Seriously, thank you. Like, you have been amazing. And so we support the work that you do. We applaud the work that you do. We celebrate the voice that you are. We celebrate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing your time with us today. So for those of you who are watching in, we're going to share her contact information. Keep watching, because we will definitely be bringing her back. And you guys can send us questions as well, because she gave out a lot of information. So if you have questions, if there is something that you like, can y'all talk about this the next time on your podcast? Absolutely. Aaliyah is more online than I am. So make sure you inbox her, inbox Damaris. They are both online more than I am, but we're here collectively as a resource. And so,
yes, just thank you. That's all I can say is thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you guys for having me. This was an amazing opportunity. I just thought I was walking into something small. I done walked into something big. See these powerful women. So thank you for having me. And I'm here. Like, let's just do what we need to do for the kids and for the family.
I love it. And the very last thing I swear was going to wrap it. Everything you said and what you were doing is a testament to what we have spoken about on this podcast. And honestly, how the work that we've been doing together, we basically have just been creating our own tables, and you really just said exactly the same thing. And we wanted to get in front of other providers to say, you can do the same thing. And we said it in the last episode, I believe, come to our sandbox and come join us, and we can all do amazing work, because you're in the early intervention. We all have our spaces, but together we are so much more powerful, and we can create our own large table and create our own funding pools. So for you, I pray for all the funding you need to have endless volunteers and people to grow this, because I'm not even sure how you are doing all of that work, but right. So continue,
thank you.
Prayers for continued blessings, and thank you for pouring into us today. You gave way more than what I asked, and we could have been doing this for hours. We'll come back. Thank you again. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.